when it comes to the science of learning, there's all kinds of minds. And this morning's guest has a great one. You'll meet her coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Ashby Ward Welcome Center of the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. We're focused on all kinds of minds. And we're visiting with its Chief Executive Officer from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Mary Dean Barringer.
Barringer.
Oh, yeah, I want to say Brewer for some reason. Maybe it's because it's a Thursday morning. I was brewing my coffee.
And early in the morning.
That's right, absolutely. Thanks so much for coming in.
Oh, my pleasure.
So exciting with you having been in town last Monday, I believe, making a
For
presentation.
the South Carolina Association of School Administrators.
Oh, really? That's what was down here. A lot of folks in town just from the Palmetto State.
That's right, 2,100 of them.
Is that right? Of school administrators from all over the state?
Yep.
And you were down making a presentation about all kinds of minds or about one of its main programs?
We were. We were introducing our program to the school administrators, all kinds of minds, and the organization, but also our program for educators and for schools called Schools Attuned, which is a professional development and service delivery model program based on the work of the Institute that helps teachers and school principals better deal with the students who start to falter and struggle in school.
And that happens a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Probably more than a lot of viewers would think.
That's right, it does.
Are you originally from the area, Mary Dean?
No, you can tell by my accent.
No, I won't give you that. There's a lot of folks from all over. This is a melting pot in the Myrtle Beach area.
I'm from the Midwest. Grew up in Detroit. My first teaching career was in Detroit Public Schools, and worked there until 2000 when I came down to join the All Kinds of Minds Institute in Chapel Hill.
So the Institute is based in Chapel Hill, North Carolina?
It is. It's nationally focused, but our home base is UNC campus.
How did they find UNC as the home base for a big national program, albeit obviously a lot of national companies have a presence in the Triangle?
Well, our co-founder, Dr. Mel Levine, was a pediatrician on the UNC medical faculty.
Great.
And he's really the person that developed this groundbreaking way of understanding deeply how kids learn, well, how anybody learns, how our minds are uniquely wired with a neurodevelopmental profile, and it impacts the way that we approach tasks in school and learn things later in our adult life.
So even as a pediatric professional, he's figured out something that would impact everyone, not just children.
Absolutely, and part of this was because as a pediatrician, oftentimes, well, you're a parent, and sometimes when your child begins to struggle in school, the first person that you turn to is your pediatrician.
Right, sure. Really
trying to figure out, could there be a medical problem for this? So he got very interested as a pediatrician in the learning issues of children, and has spent his career really being he's internationally recognized for his way of taking all of the research that's in cognitive psychology and neuroscience and synthesizing that into a very understandable program on learning variation and learning differences. And what we do at the Institute is translate that scientific knowledge base into programs and tools and processes for teachers and principals and parents to understand and help their child learn.
And this wouldn't just be for public schools, it would be for all types of schools?
It is for all types of schools.
Right.
In fact,
even go ahead.
Homeschool, that's right. What's interesting here in South Carolina, where our program first started to take root, we're in the independent school sector in the Charleston area.
Right.
And in Columbia in a children's home, Epworth Center, and then kind of spread out to some of the public schools.
So it is on the upswing here in the Palmetto State. That's great. Of course, a lot of our viewers in Robeson and Scotland County, about a quarter of our viewers are in North Carolina. They would have already heard something about all kinds of minds. Is it pretty well spread out throughout North Carolina, or no? Not yet?
I would hope that it's pretty well spread out in North Carolina. We have had some state funding from the legislature there for, I think this is our 10th year.
Is that right?
And we have probably worked with I think 3,500 teachers in schools in every county in the state of North Carolina over 10 years.
All 100 counties of North Carolina.
That's right.
at least some school
At
there
least,
knows
yeah, one
something
school.
about
That's right.
all kinds of. That's fabulous.
But you always are, find out that you're not a prophet in your homeland. So I'm always, in North Carolina, still kind of astonished that there's, folks there with Dr. Levine's, recognition, and with teachers in every county, at least one school knowing this. There's still people who really don't know that there's this gem of an institute that's in Chapel Hill.
I love it. If a viewer needs to get off to work now or get out of the house, is there a good way to learn more about All Kinds of Minds?
I think the first thing to do is go to our website, which is www.allkindsofminds.org. And there's a lot of information there, plus people to call if you want to really delve deeper into some of our work and programs and services.
Absolutely. It's a tremendous website, a ton of information on there, and it goes back to y'all's founding, and of course Dr. Levine's involvement, but he pulled in some other national persons to get involved to help fund it at the outset before you got hooked up with the legislatures.
The two co-founders are Mel Levine and Charles Schwab. Yes, Charles Schwab, the financier.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And it's one of the things that fascinated me about the Institute is that there's a pediatrician and a well-known financier that are pooling their intellectual and capital resources to bring this groundbreaking, ideas and solutions to kids who are struggling with learning. And pulled in a lot of individuals from the philanthropic community that contributed a lot of money to getting the Institute up and running and really where we are today.
That is wonderful, Mary Dean. Well, let's talk both about Schools Attuned and then about its larger parent, All Kinds of Minds. Maybe just give viewers a sense. Obviously, you were talking to school administrators last Monday when you were here in town. But if there's a way to kind of break it down so the viewers could have an idea of what Schools Attuned is all about, or how, if there was some students in the crowd along with the 2,100 administrators last week, how would you have possibly changed your talk to address those students as well?
All Kinds of Minds, first and foremost, is an institute that creates programs to try to get this body of knowledge about what we now know about learning, from scientific research and medical research into schools, into the hands of parents, into schools, and for students. So we take this complex, neurodevelopmental terminology and translate it into a way that everyone can understand that you've got a unique neurodevelopmental profile. And what that means is your brain is as uniquely wired as we are as individuals. And you've got strengths in your wiring, and there's weaknesses. And what we try to do is, while we focus on kids who are beginning to struggle in school, and they know they're smart, or parents, your kid's smart, and you just can't quite figure out what is the problem. When you understand deeply how learning varies in every individual, and you can recognize both strengths and weaknesses and how your brain's wired, then you can figure out where those tripwires are and what's causing the struggle, and have very precise interventions and accommodations that will have a better goodness of fit to the task that you're asked to do in school.
Right.
In a nutshell, when I'm on an elevator and someone says, "What do you do at All Kinds of Minds?" I say we rescue the potential of students who are starting to struggle in school so that they'll be successful learners.
So to really nip it in the bud, so parents and educators are able to see almost before it occurs or right at the beginning as they're beginning to falter.
That's right. And not only can they see it together, they have a common language to begin to talk about what's right with, what's going right in learning and what's going wrong in learning and how to solve it. I was a special education teacher for years, and one of the things that was always frustrating is communicating what I knew about learning to parents who are lay people. And so what we've tried to do is create this common vocabulary for, where kids can talk about their learning profile, parents understand it, teachers understand it, and we're all working together in an alliance to build on the strengths that they do really well, and intervene on the things that are causing to trip up.
With understanding everything is possible.
That's
I love
right.
it. I mean, that's
right.
It's almost like a tagline there. With understanding everything is possible. That idea that if the educators and the parents and the children are all talking the same language. Now, you're not talking about changing their entire language, but just some basics of making sure they can communicate. What are some examples of how that would be put into effect, Mary
Well, probably what a lot of the viewers are familiar with is it's always in the media about attention deficit disorder.
Yes, of course.
And you hear that kids are have so many attention problems, and you see advertisements for medication for attention problems. Well, when you're in the class, when you're a student, when you're a parent, when you're a teacher, and someone comes to you and you realize that they've been diagnosed with an attention problem, that doesn't really tell me, and it really doesn't tell the student, what's absolutely tripping you up around your attention. Mm-hmm. Attention is really complex. There are, if this is sort of our table of neurodevelopmental construct, attention involves mental energy controls, it involves processing controls, it involves production controls, and within your attention ability, you could have some real strengths in attention and some real weaknesses, so you're not totally attention deficit.
Right.
But you have to get very specific. So one thing could be, sometimes you see kids tapping or fidgeting, and what they're really doing is that is a great strategy, because what the problem with their attention is that they need more mental energy for the attention to process. Mm-hmm. So the best way to get some mental energy to your brain is doing something with your fingers. Mm-hmm. So what you should do is, not try to intervene on that, but that's why there's so many squeegee and,
squeeze balls, right?
Tapping
right.
right, your pen. You just need to do it in a way that doesn't annoy the person next, to you. But getting down and not misinterpreting that fidgetiness and thinking, well, they must need medication for that. It's the exact opposite effect. You don't want to dull somebody down when what they're telling you is that I have a mental energy issue, that's why I'm fidgeting. Right. That's going to help my attention, focus. So it's those kinds of things, that understanding deeply what's comprised of attention and putting the language to the problem with very specific strategies that help kids.
So a child's able to hear that, and it's not a chicken and it's not something that would cause them to begin fidgeting, because they would hear that if you're fidgeting, then you've got something pent up there. It's not.
That's right. You need mental energy to really focus. So I'm going to give you strategies to do that, so you do it in an appropriate way.
Great. So that is something truly that a child is then able to talk not only to their and talk openly about it to their parent and the educator or the school administrator.
That's right.
That's fantastic. How about some other examples of how it would be? Can you think of some other examples on a regular basis? And that's a great one, of course, because there are so many children that you hear about ADD or ADHD, the different levels that it may impact a child, but there are probably some other instances.
Well, I can talk to one that might certainly is on my mind now as I age, but there's memory. Mm-hmm. And certainly all of us are wired for different capacity for memory. And what I like talking about memory is that we talk about a neurodevelopmental profile, and your mind does change over time, mm-hmm. which is both optimistic and not optimistic. Mm-hmm. It's optimistic because if a child is struggling with something right now, with attention or memory, it's not a life sentence. Mm-hmm. It may be, your brains can change and are malleable, and with interventions can certainly strengthen over time. Memory is very complex. There's active working memory, short-term memory, long-term memory. Mm-hmm. And where a lot of kids get tripped up in school, there is never a time in your life that you have to remember more. Where there are so many memory demands on you than there is in middle school and high school.